Hey everyone, it's Ryan with Spiceworks. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Today we have another Spiceworks partner webinar, Raising the Bar on Backup and Recovery, brought to you by WD and StorageCraft. A few things I hope everybody checks out. The first and probably the most important thing is the Q&A box. It's to the left. Please don't be shy. Ask questions throughout. They're strongly encouraged. We're going to get to those questions at the end via a verbal Q&A. Another thing to remember is that we are recording the webinar, so if you have to step out for any reason, it's no huge cause for concern. You're going to get a link to that recording in about a week. And then just one more thing is that there are going to be a few videos throughout this presentation. And in order to get the best view, you can expand your slide view in the upper right-hand corner. So we encourage you to do that so you can get the best view possible and see everything those videos entail. And now I would like to present our presenters. We have Steven Snyder, Technical Marketing Manager for StorageCraft, Martin Proper, Senior Product Manager for WD, Brett Daly, Director, Alliance Marketing for StorageCraft. Brett is going to kind of be primarily the Q&A moderator, and the other two gentlemen are going to be the main presenters, and Martin's going to get us started. So Martin, whenever you're ready.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time for the webinar today. As we look at the agenda, things that we're going to talk about today are WD Sentinel as a storage solution, backup and disaster recovery, ShadowProtect. I'm going to turn that over to my friend Steve. He's going to talk about Image Manager, Onsite Recovery, Offsite Recovery options, and then we will also discuss WD and StorageCraft partner programs. And kicking it off, a lot of folks wonder how WD and StorageCraft came together. Well, when you've got two great companies, we came together as a field success. There are quite a few joint partners that requested that we work together. We have case studies with Nextech, Curtis Flax, and some others. That was using the WD X-Series. Additionally, we also have our S-Series product, which we also worked with StorageCraft on, and ShadowProtect. And we have case studies on both of these that are available. When we look at the hardware that was the base for these joint ventures, we have several hardware platforms at WD within our Sentinel line of storage servers. The product that was used in the first ones was the WD DX4000 series. It's an Intel Atom processor. It's got redundant power supplies, redundant NICs. Right now the capacities run up to 16 terabytes. We have those available in very affordable configurations. We also have the RX4100 if pedestal is what you're looking for. We have the DX in a rack mount configuration, again with an Atom processor for affordability, dual NICs, dual power supplies for redundancy. When you look at these, they make a perfect storage target for backup and disaster recovery for whatever your environment may entail. The second set of case studies that we had showed were using our WD Sentinel S-Series product. This one's a lot more powerful than the previous one. The S-Series is actually a Xeon processor inside this box. And when you look at the size of it, it's really compact, thus the ultra-compact storage plus server. So inside we have a total of 6 drives that we can put in here. 2 boot drives, which are 2.5 inch, and 4 data drives that are 3.5 inch. So it's quite a powerful little box and quite a little package. When we look at the key hardware features that make up our S-Series, the Xeon class processor, it's an E3 Xeon CPU in this. We have a dual core and a quad core, 8 and 16 gigs of ECC memory, and those are expandable up to 32 gigs. Pretty important when you're looking at installing applications like StorageCraft and being able to have a robust platform. It's a ridiculously small form factor. It's the smallest Xeon server on the market. Unified storage lets us do a NAS, an iSCSI stand, and a backup server. It's low power, low acoustics, so it's not intrusive in an office environment. Best-in-class data protection, dual redundant everything. So it's redundant power, redundant Ethernet, redundant boot drives. And you have your choice of data redundancy, whether you wanted to use Windows storage spaces or if you wanted to use the onboard hardware RAID. 16 terabytes that can be used JBOD, RAID 0, 1, 5, 10, and there's also security built into the platform. So there's a bezel lock to keep the hard drives from being pulled out of the front. There's a Kensington lock to affix it permanently to a desk. So it's a great package, easy to deploy, and very powerful. Also, it's a 1-year warranty. We also include 1 year of Guardian Pro Global Services, so that assists in deployment, configuration, and we have warranty upsell options as well to take you up to 5 years worth of warranty on the product. This here, roles and technology, this is just a portfolio overview as you look at our storage server lineup. When you look at the DX and the RX series, those range from $899 up to $2349. Now, for some folks that might be looking at this, one of the big differences between the WD storage servers and other products that you might look at in this class, while we all might have an Atom processor and we might all be running Windows Server on it, one of the big differences with WD is that rather than putting in less expensive drives, we understand that customers need enterprise-level data support and data security. And with that, we actually put our best drives into these platforms. These contain the WD Data Center class or our black drives. So within each of these platforms, you'll find our SE Data Center class drives. So it's an extra step up, if you will, as you look at these platforms when using it for business-critical data. That's all I have on the hardware platforms. I'd like to turn it over to Steve to talk about backup and disaster recovery solutions.
Hey, thanks, Martin, and hello, Spiceheads. Martin, I just wanted to reiterate something. I have a DS5100 in my lab here, and it's probably my favorite piece of equipment because not only is it storage, but it's also something that is, with that Xeon processor, it's something more powerful than just a storage device. So hopefully in the next few slides we can illustrate some of the functionality and features in the demos that we do. Okay, so let me start out by saying that at StorageCraft here, we're all about disaster recovery. We understand that to have a really good disaster recovery plan, you have to intelligently integrate both the software and the hardware in your IT environment. So what I want to do is show you today how the Western Digital Sentinel NAS and StorageCraft technology can provide you with a powerful disaster recovery solution. Every great disaster recovery solution includes these 4 elements on the screen. First of all, backup. Second, replication. Third, management. And fourth, recovery. And with backup, you need to know that you have a fast and reliable backup technology that can protect not only your important data, but also the operating systems, installed applications, and any custom configuration you have on your business systems. In addition, you want to be able to replicate. So, the old adage, 2 copies are better than 1, or perhaps you want to be able to replicate information off-site to the cloud. This is where your hardware equipment, the Sentinel NAS and Image Manager from StorageCraft can help you to replicate your backup images automatically and scale that out for whatever size business you're dealing with. In addition, you need to manage, so you want to be able to have a very quick way of seeing the health of your environment. You want to be able to control processes from a central location, and you want to be able to set alerts and thresholds so that you can see the performance of your system and to manage that performance. And of course, you also want to be able to scale it out. And then, of course, it's all about the recovery. We've always said that. In this case, one thing you can always be sure of is that after a disaster, you don't know what kind of IT environment you're dealing with. So with the Western Digital Sentinel NAS storing your information, you can very quickly recover that information to a physical or a virtual platform, regardless of what type of environment you're dealing with the StorageCraft technology. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Okay, first of all, as far as the backup software goes, our flagship product, ShadowProtect 5, is our backup software. This allows you to do rapid recovery of full systems as well as files and folders, and you can recover these systems to virtual environments or to bare metal, including dissimilar hardware using our hardware independent restore technology. And if you haven't seen it already, definitely check out the HIR. It's gold for anybody that wants to be able to recover systems quickly. You can also recover, test your recovery capabilities. We always want you to test your backups, test your recovery processes, examine your disaster recovery solution, and look for ways to improve, of course. And migrating to new systems with the StorageCraft ShadowProtect is a breeze. Like I said, HIR is really gold. And then our customers have always said it just works. That's one of the best compliments we can get, is that we're a reliable product, we're consistent, and we just work. So you can trust us. Now, if you want to, though, let me go ahead and say this. We do have trials of our software on our website, so if you want to see for yourself how reliable and fast this is, definitely go check that out. Just thought I'd add that. And by the way, if you have any questions for Martin or myself, just a reminder that you can go ahead and enter those into the screen. I know some questions are coming in. I just want to make sure that if you haven't thought about it, you can definitely ask us some questions. Now, as far as the replication and management side of that puzzle that I showed earlier, our free image manager management tool allows you to automatically verify your backup images. So you can, as new image files are created, they're automatically verified, and also your image manager can be configured to go back and automatically check and recheck the integrity of those backup files, so that you always know that your backup files are as good as the day that they were taken. Consolidation, if you're using a continuous incremental plan so that you have a base image and you have incremental images going forward, Image Manager will go ahead and manage that file chain and consolidate the backup files into daily, weekly, and monthly files. This allows you for a faster recovery process as it collapses those files faster using the daily, weekly, and monthly consolidated files. And of course, retention policies, you can define how long you keep the backups. Are you looking at keeping backups for 30 days, 6 months, a year, 5 years? That's all handled inside of the Image Manager application. And one of the things we're going to demonstrate in this, I'm actually using my DS5100 for all these demos that are coming up, but I'm going to show you in the process how to use our Intelligent FTP, or you can use ShadowStream or some other tool to replicate your backup image files from one NAS to the cloud or to another NAS, and that's really kind of slick. So we'll get to that shortly. Okay, on-site recovery. Now, one of the easiest tasks is to recover files and folders using ShadowProtect and the Sentinel NAS. In this case, I'm going to demonstrate how I do a file and recovery from an Exchange server, because I want to get some files off of it. Maybe I need to get the EDB file and transaction logs to do some manual work, or maybe I just need to get some kind of information from that Exchange server. It could be any server, but in this case, I'm using an Exchange server and doing file and folder recovery directly from my Western Digital Sentinel NAS device to a production system. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the demo, and here's the video.
Cover information from a backup image of a Microsoft Exchange 2013 server. I simply navigate to the folder containing my backup images on my Western Digital Sentinel NAS device, then right-click on the image file and select Mount. I can also select Quick Mount to immediately mount the image as a read-only volume. Selecting Mount starts a wizard which allows me to configure how the volume is mounted, including the drive letter assigned to the new volume. When I finish the wizard, the volume is automatically mounted, and I can then drag and drop specific files and folders from the backup volume to production storage. And when I'm done, I simply right-click on the volume and select Dismount to dismount the backup and release the local drive letter.
Now, as I said, that's really easy to recover files and folders using the Sentinel NAS and StorageCraft ShadowProtect. Sometimes, though, you need more than just a file and folder recovery. So in this next example, I'm going to show I'm going to use Western Digital Sentinel NAS and StorageCraft's virtual boot technology, and I'm going to spin up a virtual machine running directly on the NAS device. So like I said earlier, the neat thing about this, one of the reasons this is my favorite piece of equipment, is that it's more than just storage. It actually has the power to run a virtual machine right on the box using StorageCraft's Virtual Boot. And if you have a production system that drops off, you're able to very quickly boot up from a backup image directly on your NAS device, a virtual machine that can replace that as a temporary failover. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and show the virtual boot running on a Western Digital Sentinel, and let's see the demo.
Technology allows me to spin up a virtual machine directly from a ShadowProtect backup image. The Western Digital Sentinel NAS not only stores my backup image files on a RAID volume, it also has the power to let me virtual boot a backup hosted directly on the NAS. All I need to do is right-click on a backup image file and select Virtual Boot to start the Virtual Boot wizard. My backup files are password protected. The wizard also lets me configure the virtual machine with specifics like the amount of memory allocated to the device and the network connection. Once I click Finish, the technology automatically builds the virtual machine using the appropriate image files from my backup chain. Now, all I need to do is log into the device once the virtual boot process is done. Running Virtual Boot on a Western Digital Sentinel NAS is a great way to minimize my downtime when a production system fails.
Now that's a great failover solution, and it's easy. I mean, there's not much to it. You simply point to the backup image file on your Western Digital Sentinel NAS, right-click, virtual boot it, and you're up and running with a temporary solution. So the reason I say it's temporary is Oracle's VirtualBox is, of course, a Type 2 hypervisor. So if you're looking at implementing a more long-term, more permanent solution into your environment, you might want to consider using the Head Start Restore technology on a Western Digital Sentinel NAS. What Head Start Restore does is it allows the StorageCraft software to pre-stage a recovery. So basically, as new image files are created, these can be applied to a virtual drive, a physical drive, whatever you need, whether it's physical or virtual, so that you can simply finalize that recovery process, spin up the new device, and be running in no time. So I don't have a demonstration of Head Start Restore, but if you're interested, definitely give us a holler. We'd be glad to show you how that works. I do have my last demonstration, which is going to show you a little bit about using two Western Digital Sentinel NAS devices and replicating between them. So one might be on-site, one might be in a remote office. This is definitely a very nice way of creating your own private hybrid cloud. And it's a very powerful process too, because what you've done is you've offloaded the replication processes through Image Manager, and we've installed Image Manager directly on our Western Digital Sentinel NAS. So all of this, it's basically creating a BDR appliance at that point, which is really slick, because this NAS device fits so many roles in that scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the demo now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually replicate information stored, backup chains for a domain controller stored on my local Sentinel to an offsite location. And here's the demo.
Application, and these are my managed files. To create a hybrid cloud, I'm selecting the backup chain for my domain controller and then clicking Add New Replication Target. I want to replicate my backup image files from my domain controller from this Sentinel NAS repository to another Sentinel NAS offsite. I'm using my StorageCraft Intelligent FTP license to replicate the data, and then I'm adding a new location to my list of offsite targets. I need to give this target a name, an IP address, and login credentials on the secure FTP host. Then I save the target location. I'm replicating my base full image, so I uncheck this box. Leave this box checked if you plan to seed your offsite location. On the Replication Mode tab, I select the option to replicate all of the original unconsolidated files, and then I click Save to immediately begin replicating to my cloud storage.
Okay, so the idea here is you experience a site-destroying event. You've used your Western Digital Sentinel NAS and StorageCraft Image Manager to replicate your information offsite to another repository, another Western Digital Sentinel NAS, for example. Now you can also use Image Manager to replicate to other hosts as well that are offsite providers. Like I know some of our customers have used Amazon's web services. A couple other hosted services are available. Anything that you can connect to with an FTP connection, pretty much you can use as an offsite replication. And then, of course, if you wanted to, you can also replicate your information stored on your Western Digital Sentinel NAS to the StorageCraft cloud. Our cloud services are an offsite backup and recovery solution coming in 3 tiers. Basic is archival, plus is basically archival plus file and folder recovery, and then premium is all of the above, as well as the ability to spin up a virtual machine in our cloud for up to 30 days free per machine per year for disaster recovery and for test purposes. It's really a slick system because you can actually create a virtual private network or assign public IP addresses to your backup image files and your VMs running in our cloud. And of course, accessing the information is all self-service, and we simply charge a $10 fee for shipping out a seed drive if you want to transfer your information on a USB 3 4 terabyte external drive up to our cloud services and marry that with your continuing incrementals in your site. So you can replicate those easily. And it makes it a breeze with the capacity of the Western Digital Sentinel NAS to seed all that information up to the cloud, and then you've got something for offsite recovery. So Martin, that's about it for me, but I'm going to go ahead and mention the partner program that we have available with StorageCraft, and I thought maybe after I mention that you'd like to talk a little bit about the Western Digital Partner Program as well, and then I think we have time for Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and say that as far as the StorageCraft Partner Program is, it's a free program for partners that can sign up. This is typically for managed service providers that are partners or value-added resellers. But definitely check into it. It has additional resources, training, videos. It has additional templates and documents to help you build your business, so that if you're providing a Western Digital Sentinel NAS for your customer, you can use the StorageCraft software and really show how that's a winning solution and grow your business. We also have MDF funds available, so definitely check it out. It's free.
All right. Thanks, Steve. And looking at WD's partner portal, for the Select WD SMB Partner Program, we have our website at www.selectwdsmb.com. Here you can sign up to be a WD partner. With that, you also get training. You get access to the WD University. There's programs that we run through the WD SMB Partner Portal. And when you sign up, you get access to all of those things. One thing I'd like to make sure that you guys noted, every one of the demos that Steve showed, it took a minute or minute or less in order for him to do any one of those tasks. So that's an amazing and very powerful application that StorageCraft is offering within each one of those demonstrations that Steve showed. So it definitely makes for a easy to deploy, very quick to recover backup and disaster recovery solution.
And all of those were done on your Western Digital Sentinel DS5100 too, which it really is an amazing tool. It's not just storage.
Oh, I thought we had given you guys the quad core. Wow.
You did. You gave that to the other guys, but I have the lower end model in my lab, so I got lucky to get that. But I'm really happy with it.
Okay. Why don't we open it up for questions at this time, unless I think that's where we are in the presentation.
Yeah, and this is Brett, and we have a lot of good questions that came in, so thanks everyone for asking those, and so we'll dive right into the questions. I'm not going to go in the order that you asked them, but I'm going to group a couple together here. So, and this is, right off the bat, a question that always comes up. It's the question is, what is the advantage for a small company to use the Western Digital Sentinel hardware, comparing that to just putting a low-cost NAS in place and landing the backups there? And a companion question to that would be, how does Image Manager impact the network load? Can it do its checking and replication at specific times to lessen the impact? So I'll let you guys address both those.
All right, I'll take the first part of that. The benefits of using a Sentinel product as opposed to a low-cost NAS. There's a few points I'd like to throw out there. One, the OS is pre-installed, and while the low-cost NAS has that as well, those are generally homegrown to a OEM, their Linux distribution. And there's a lot of things that you can't do with a Linux distribution. If you're incorporating a server into your existing AD structure or your infrastructure, adding a Windows server makes it a very easy thing to manage. You can manage it all from a single pane of glass from within your domain. When you look at what some of these lower cost NAS products offer, the hardware's somewhat limited. Even Western Digital makes lower cost NAS products, but that's not what we're actually focusing on here today. This is raising the bar on backup and disaster recovery solutions and having an appliance that you can almost just install with minimal effort as a VAR or a MSP. And I'll let Steve talk to the StorageCraft side of that.
Hey, thanks, Martin. And exactly like you were saying, if you have an appliance which has minimal impact on your network, which you can install as a VAR or an MSP, what we've done here is we've basically installed the Image Manager not on a production system in our environment, but directly on the NAS itself. So I think a best practice, in my opinion, is that if I have production workloads on all of these systems, whether they're virtual machines or physical systems, and they're running throughout the day making money for me in my business or making money for my customers, I don't want to have any kind of impact on that from a backup and recovery system and management processes. So in this case, what we've done is we've married the ShadowProtect 5 very low impact backup process, which stores the backup image files directly on the NAS device, with the Image Manager management tool, so that you have kind of your single pane of glass there to manage your backup images. And as you saw when I was looking at the hybrid cloud version, I have a series of managed folders, which Image Manager is going through and checking new backup images as they come in and processing those. But it's running on the NAS device. So basically, I've taken that workload, that impact that would be on the network, and I'm running it entirely locally on this Western Digital Sentinel NAS device, which has that Xeon processor, and is able to do that workload directly on the NAS on the locally stored image files stored on the NAS. So basically, there's zero impact to your IT infrastructure environment. So it's really a nice solution because it offloads everything, and it still provides you that central management process, and it's just slick because everything's right there on your NAS device like a BDR appliance.
Very good. Here's a follow-up for you, Stephen. This is about ShadowProtect. Can ShadowProtect back up in real time if there are users with open files?
Yes. ShadowProtect actually will do a number of things in the backup process. Something a lot of people don't know about us is that StorageCraft has been working with Microsoft closely. We're a gold development partner, but we're actually a VSS provider as well. So our backup process leverages the existing VSS system that Microsoft has, but we're actually so tightly integrated with Microsoft that we go in there and we have not only the VSS requester side of things that most vendors have, but we actually have our own VSS provider and our drivers that we allow to ensure that whether it's a user that has an open file on the system that you need to access in real time, or a SQL database with transactions occurring constantly, or Microsoft Exchange, or SharePoint, any of these systems are especially those that are VSS aware, we're able to capture that information and provide you with a fast and reliable backup. And also because we're leveraging change block tracking, we're seeing this as it occurs on the system, so we have even minimal impact when it comes time to take that snapshot, because we don't have to traverse the file system to look for those changes. We're already aware of them. And so if you're looking at real-time impact for users and applications running services, we're going to be one of the lowest impact in the available vendors out there.
Very good. Here's a good question about one of the demos specifically. It said, I'm not too familiar with ShadowProtect, but I know it does image-based backups. Did I see in the demo correctly that you do not need to restore a full system to recover individual file and folders?
Yes, that's a great question. We do image-based backups. Now, back when I started, well, not really when I started in the IT industry, but back a long time ago when I was working for a financial company, we were using a competitive product that did file and folder backups. That relied on going through the Windows file system, selecting specific files and folders. It kept logs about those, and it would back those up to in our case, a tape drive for storage. That was nice for the backup process because I could pull files across, but the problem was that if I lost a system, say for example I had one of the VPs come to me and say that their laptop had crashed, I was in a situation where in order to restore that, I had to install the operating system, install the applications, and then recover the files from the tape backup. Things have come a long way since that point, and image-based backups allow us to take a snapshot of the entire drive. And what that provides you with is a point-in-time reference to exactly what is on that system, including the operating system, including the running services, including the business-critical data, the installed applications, everything. And what that image does is, if it's in a situation where you've used something like ShadowProtect and you're storing that image on your Western Digital Sentinel NAS, you did see correctly. All I had to do was mount that image. Now what it showed in that process as I went through the mount process, I could have done the quick mount, which would have done it almost instantly for me, but I wanted to show that what it was doing was it was seeing the dependencies from that point in time and all the previous incrementals as well as the base full that I'd used that are stored on that NAS, and collapsing those into an image that represented that point in time from the recovery point. And then it mounted that for me on my local system, and if I wanted to, I could share that mounted volume across the network, make it a shareable volume, so that if I was an IT administrator and I had a department that came and said, hey, one of our employees deleted all these folders accidentally, can we get those back? I could simply point to that recovery point, mount the image file, and present that to them across the network, and they could drag and drop the appropriate files that they wanted to in a simple process back to a production system or to a local drive. So yes, the short answer for my long dialogue here is that yes, you saw correctly. We simply mounted that backup image file. It collapsed all the dependencies and presented that as a local volume that I could just drag and drop files and folders directly to production. Thanks, Brett.
Very good. So a couple more questions on the demos. One was that said, hey, the demos weren't, resolution wasn't great. Are these demos available to watch elsewhere?
I'm sure we can make them available to watch elsewhere. I know that we're recording this webinar, and I will present these to Spiceworks, the videos that we have, and we'll definitely make sure they're available. If you want a copy of them right now, you can email us at marketing@storagecraft.com, and if you want content from Martin. Martin, do you have an email address they can reach out to you if they have something they want?
Sure, you can actually reach me at martin.proper, P-R-O-E-P-P-E-R, at WDC.com.
Okay, so yeah, we'll make those videos available. Sorry for the resolution, and thanks, Brett.
Sure. Also, StorageCraft has a pretty good set of videos on our YouTube channels with some demos of virtual boot and file and folder recovery. While those aren't using the Sentinel specifically, the process would be the same. So if you wanted to jump on our YouTube channel and check those out, that'd be a quick way to see how that works as well. So a couple that I'll take, actually, does your software work with BitLocker? That's a real good question. We're actually working with BitLocker right now. We do work with BitLocker, but with one caveat. One of their methods of doing their definition files is causing ShadowProtect to create a very large incremental file when it's backing it up. So if you're using a full backup, just doing full backups on a weekly basis or something like that, that's not a concern. But typically, a best practice is to use a full backup with continuous incremental. And so we are having a little bit of issue with BitLocker on that, but we are in discussions with them, working on that to alleviate the situation of creating a very large incremental backup. So that's in the works. The next question was, is this compatible with Linux? And currently StorageCraft is a Windows-specific solution. We can work on Windows servers, desktops, etc. Steve talked a little bit about our deep VSS integration. One of the reasons that we are very good at getting a good backup that's able to be restored, and reliability is something that StorageCraft has built its name on. We're actually on the roadmap for Linux. We've done a lot of testing. It's not as reliable as we want it yet, and so we won't be releasing that until a future date when it's meeting our rather stringent requirements for reliability of backup and restore. But you can know that Linux is on the roadmap for StorageCraft to deliver. So a couple of other questions then are, is StorageCraft compatible with existing storage solutions in our current environment? And I'll talk about that a little bit. The answer is yes. Basically, if StorageCraft ShadowProtect can see your storage as through Windows, we can put a backup to that storage. But really what we're talking about in this webinar itself is the ability to not just use storage for backups, but to use storage for backups that can then do more meaningful things like file and folder recovery, but more specifically being able to virtualize a backup right on the NAS, allowing Image Manager to run on the NAS to do all the verification, consolidation, and replication, which Steve talked about. And again, it's a really nice match with the Sentinel technology and the StorageCraft software to be able to do that all on the NAS and alleviate any network traffic of that. I should also mention that the Image Manager does allow you to throttle replication offsite and schedule that based on time of day and bandwidth available, etc. So those type of performance tuning for replication offsite just work perfectly on the Sentinel. And we're talking both model lines are the very first slides where we talked about the case studies. The first one was on the DX product line that was running Image Manager, doing all the consolidation, verification, replication. Then the next one is on the S line with a Xeon processor that's actually able to do a full virtual boot on the Sentinel as well as Head Start Restore, which actually leads me into the next question, which I'll let you take, Stephen. The question is, does a virtual boot convert the ShadowProtect backup files to VHD or VMDK? And another companion question to that would be, if I wanted to recover directly onto Hyper-V, would I use the virtual boot or Head Start Restore?
Okay, great. Those are great questions. Let me go ahead and take this a piece at a time. Can you recover directly to VHD or VMDK? Yes. In this case, we have several different options that you can use. I think the one that we were illustrating here, because it's the most common, is to use something like Head Start Restore, and that will actually allow you to connect to a hypervisor environment like ESX and place a VHD there. So in this case, I would say the easiest process would be simply using something like Image Manager with a Head Start Restore license. Head Start Restore is a patented technology with StorageCraft, and simply configure that to lay down the new image files as they come in directly on a VHD. But we also have some other options where, for example, in ShadowProtect, you can convert a backup image file to a virtual disk. That's useful. In my case, I like less of a manual process and more of an automated process. So like I said, I tend to go with Head Start Restore. And then that could just point to your virtual hypervisor and recover that information. So the last question that said, would I use something like a virtual boot or Head Start Restore for creating that virtual drive? I would typically go with a Head Start Restore because, as I mentioned, virtual boot is a temporary solution. Martin pointed out that it was a very fast solution, just simply right-click and virtual boot. And it's definitely an easy, low-cost way because virtual boot is free. It comes with every ShadowProtect license, so it's part of the product. But it's using a Type 2 hypervisor, and it collapses the backup images into a flat file. So this is not something I would use longer than 2 weeks. Now, bear in mind that if you're looking at a large data set, let's say that your server has 6 terabytes of data on it, and you're collapsing this information and compressing it in stored format in incremental backup image files on your Western Digital Sentinel NAS. As soon as you spin that up, you're going to have that in that virtual boot environment running on the NAS so that you can access it. So it's a great failover. But if you are going to go through a recovery process, a restore process, transferring that 6 terabytes of information takes time. I'm sorry, we can't get around the laws of physics yet. We're working on that, but speed of light is a constant, and transferring that data in the form of electrons across your network from point A to point B simply takes time. So what we've done is we've implemented the virtual boot as part of our product years ago, and this has been the solution to help customers where they have a production system that fails and they want to recover that quickly. But it's a temporary solution while they get the restore process going. Head Start Restore is more of a permanent process. As I mentioned, you can point that to a physical system with dissimilar hardware. You can point that to a virtual system. Either one works, and what it does is it simply creates that standby, which you can finalize and turn on at a moment's notice in the event that you have a disaster with the production system. So I would prefer Head Start Restore. I think that's my short answer.
I have a question for you, Steve. If I do the temporary running the VM on the Sentinel, does the continuous incremental continue, or is that put on hold while I'm running the VM on the Sentinel?
Martin, great question. Thank you for asking that. It actually continues. So basically, because we're taking an exact copy of that system from that point in time when you're creating that virtual machine in virtual boot on the Western Digital Sentinel NAS, that machine still has all of the same processes, including your backup process. Now, one thing to note is that because we don't want you to virtual boot something and have it start writing backup processes out to your storage when the production system is still running, the virtual boot will, by default, pause or stop that backup process. But it's a very simple thing after that VM is booted up on the NAS to go in there, restart that backup process, and that virtual machine will continue the backup chain, the incremental backup chain, exactly as the production system had before it had failed.
Very good. And speaking of virtual boot, we hadn't talked about this in the presentation at all, but it's an excellent way for you to test your backups to see if they are recoverable. Just as Steve mentioned, that you pull up virtual boot in an isolated environment and then can bridge it out for production. We have a lot of customers and partners that will use the virtual boot in their disaster testing scenarios, where they go in, virtualize the backups, and make sure that everything is recoverable. Also used for some patch testing. So you can virtualize it in virtual boot, apply a patch, make sure that it all works great, tear it down, and then apply it to your production server. And you'll be able to do that all without affecting the production server at all, because you're working right off the backup, but you can know that it's identical to your production server because it is the image-based backup that you're virtualizing from. So it's a lot easier than, you probably, a lot of you remember the days of actually trying to test your backups when you were just backing up one file and folder, and you had to get a system, set it up, install the OS, install the apps, patch it all, then restore the data to test the backup. Very arduous and time-consuming. And then, even with tape-based backups, doing that process takes a lot of time and resources. So again, virtual boot's a great way to just virtualize those quickly, make sure your backups are recoverable, do some simple testing. And so great feature. As Steve mentioned, it just comes with the base ShadowProtect product. So any time that you're using ShadowProtect, you have access to be able to virtual boot. So another question that came in, and this gets, very basic question. I need to do backup of each client computer in a workgroup setting with one file server. What is the best way to do that?
Okay, I'll go ahead and grab that one, Martin. Okay, so here's what I would consider the best way to do that is, if I've got several systems and a file server, I'm going to assume that I'm backing up the file server too. It's not being used as storage because I'm going to use the Western Digital Sentinel as my storage device. You could also use your file server for storage if that's what you wanted. What I would do is simply use our ShadowProtect software, and personally this is how I do it. I will deploy this remotely to each of those systems so that the backup process is started on each of those computers in the workplace. And then I can see that from my laptop with the ShadowProtect user interface installed. I can configure the backup processes. I can see the status of the backup processes. I can see any issues and have it automatically alert me of any issues through my system, my interface right there. And then each of these backup processes, rather than being kicked off from my central location, they're actually running independent of my system. So it's kind of like a deployed independent deployment. I'm trying to think of a good way of describing this, but if any of those systems was turned off, or if I had a problem with my central monitoring and managing that's going on my laptop, all the other backup processes would keep running. So basically there's resilience built in because it's not dependent on a single point of failure, and those backup processes would point to my Western Digital Sentinel NAS device. So whether it's my file server or all those PCs in that work group, they're all getting backed up independently of each other, minimal impact across the network because they're compressing and doing everything on the local system and shooting it over to the storage device, and then I can centrally manage and monitor all of those processes from my laptop, or I could even install it on a couple other computers if I'm an MSP and I have technicians. As we mentioned a few times, the Image Manager is a free product, so I can install this for all of my, well, as many times as I needed to. But I could also install ShadowProtect user interface, and I could view the licenses for remote systems and install that as many times as I needed for my technicians. And because I'm managing them centrally but running them independently, I'm getting a reliable backup of all of those PCs, storing the information on the Sentinel. And then I can go through the Sentinel and get the information I need using the tools on my desktop or on the other copies that I've created for my technicians. I don't know if I answered that quite as clearly as I wanted to, but the idea here is that it's an interdependent backup process. There's an agent that runs at a very low level of the operating system so that it's very efficient and very fast, and those act independently to store the information that's being backed up from all those systems onto the Western Digital Sentinel NAS, and then I simply manage it from a central location. I hope that's good. Brett?
Yeah, in fact, follow-up question to that. We didn't talk much about Shadow Control CMD on here, and this must be an existing StorageCraft partner, but Paul says, can CMD be installed on the Western Digital Sentinel to provide monitoring and management of ShadowProtect installs?
I'll go ahead and answer that one too. For those of you that are out there, the Spice Heads that aren't familiar with the StorageCraft products, we have our Shadow Control product, which is basically it's an image that you can put on a VM or on a physical device, and this image is Linux-based. It's free, and it is a monitoring solution which allows you to go ahead and monitor your entire enterprise or maybe multiple sites. If you're an MSP and you have a number of customers and you want to manage all of their systems across these various geographical sites on one system. So Shadow Control will actually give you that breadth of management. You can deploy specific profiles. So if you have a profile for a server and another profile for a desktop, these backup profiles can be deployed across all of the endpoints within the categories that you set up on CMD. But in this case, I know that it probably could be deployed on the Western Digital Sentinel NAS device, but basically you're going to need a hypervisor, and in this case probably look at licensing for Server 2012 to enable the hypervisor role on the Sentinel NAS, and then you'll need to have that running as a VM. I know it's a very low impact VM. I think it's 80 gig for storage requirements, and then as I said, it's Linux, so it's been tuned to meet the needs of just this particular role, so it doesn't have all the extra apps and stuff in it. It's just basically a Linux system that we've tuned for this specific purpose. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you can run it on there, the Western Digital Sentinel NAS, but I haven't done it. So I would say I'm used to running that on either a separate device or running it on a full-fledged hypervisor platform. That's what I've done in the past, and that's what I would be familiar with. But the more I think about it, I guess you could.
If I may, so you can run. So there is a hypervisor that sits on the 2012 R2 Essentials of the DS line of Sentinels. With that, Microsoft technically says that you're only supposed to run an Essentials VM in that hypervisor session. I will tell you that you could probably run something more than that. You would be in violation of Microsoft user agreement. It's possible, but as Steve said, if you migrate to standard from essentials, you're then allowed to run hypervisor within Microsoft licensing and user agreements. So with that, putting on my good Microsoft partner hat, you should do it that way by upgrading to standard, and then you're allowed to run hypervisor more than just an essentials version of the OS.
And thanks for that clarification, Martin. I appreciate that. I know the hardware can do it. I just wasn't sure as far as the licensing goes, because Essentials is kind of pared down. So thanks for clarifying that.
So next question is a good question. With ShadowProtect replication, if I'm replicating between a WD Sentinel NAS to an offsite WD Sentinel NAS, what is the minimum recommended link speed between sites?
Okay, I'll go ahead and field that one too. I know we only have about 3.5 minutes left, so I'll make this short as opposed to my longer answers. We have a number of customers around the world, and some of those are in locations like Australia, where they may not have fast link speeds necessarily because it's more rural, or South America. Even some places here in the state of Utah, we have some rural areas where link speed is not what it could be. For that reason, we have our ShadowStream technology, and what this does is it's basically our WAN acceleration, which allows you to use even slow speeds like, well, I would say even dial-up speeds for that matter, and manage those effectively, maximizing the traffic across that slow connection. So, Brett, I don't know that we have a minimum speed requirement because we have some people that use ShadowStream in very, very low speed locations, but obviously the faster the better. But even if you're on a low speed, ShadowStream can accelerate the traffic, efficiently use multiple ports, and as Brett mentioned earlier, it has the ability to schedule or throttle traffic according to your needs, so you could essentially offload your replication to outside of business hours and minimize it during regular business hours. I hope that answers the question.
That does, Stephen. Actually, that first case study that we highlighted with Nextech, they're in rural Kansas and have some real challenges on link speed and particularly in latency. And that case study actually talks about why they chose ShadowStream for just the reasons that Steve articulated, its ability to handle latency and reconnect without starting the replication job over, its throttling capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. So like Steve said, the ShadowStream technology is a great one when you are challenged with not super good connectivity site to site. So we're just a couple other quick ones. Someone asked about not-for-profit pricing and also about getting demos done for them on-site locally. So we can talk about both of those. I would say send those questions right to sales@storagecraft.com on the nonprofit pricing, as well as arranging for a demo locally to you. And we will pass that on to our sales team in the area, see if we can do a joint with the Western Digital team, but we'll make sure that we get out to your site and show you this joint solution between the companies. And with that, I think we addressed all the questions. So again, thank the audience for being so interested and active in asking questions for the webinar. And
thank
I
you,
guess
everyone.
Yep, turning this back over to you, Ryan.
All right, guys, thanks so much. Talk about a great Q&A. And just a reminder to everybody that you are going to get a link to this recording in about a week, so you can check out the presentation again. And we just had so many questions that StorageCraft and WD are going to get the chance to follow up with you, so no fear there. And, of course, we want to thank our presenters, Stephen, Martin, And Brett, great job, guys. And again, I just can't thank you enough for that informative Q&A session. And, of course, thanks to our attendees. They stuck around the whole time and were just so involved. So we just want to thank everyone in the webinar today. And that is going to do it for us. Guys, do you have any closing words?
No, thank you, everyone, for taking the time to learn more about how we, StorageCraft and WD, are raising the bar on backup disaster recovery.
And
yeah,
thanks, guys. Looking forward to see you guys at Spice World 2014. This is Steve signing out.
That's awesome. Well, and that is going to do it. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.